Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He's the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman Schiff, your reaction, please, first to this news of these pardons to this evening.
They're grotesque. They're morally repugnant, and they're exactly what you'd expect of Donald Trump. He has pardoned people who murdered innocent civilians, men, women, and children, corrupt Republican elected officials who were early endorsers of his. He has pardoned people who lied to cover up for him or for themselves as part of a probe into another nation's attack on our democracy. Once again, this is what you get when you elect a corrupt president or a corrupt man as president. You get corruption. It's like the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. It's what we've come to expect of this president and this administration. None of these people deserved any form of clemency.
I want to read your statement that you put out because there's something very important in here legally that I think it's useful for people to understand. You said Trump has valued loyalty above all else, above the rule of law, above our democracy, and certainly above justice. If you lie to cover up for the president, you get a pardon. If you're a corrupt politician who endorsed Trump, you get a pardon. If you murder civilians while at war, you get a pardon. And it goes to show if you elect a corrupt man as president of the United States, you get corruption and loss of it. That middle part there. He has pardoned people who are loyal to him. He has pardoned people who are corrupt. And he has pardoned people who were adjudicated by a court in a lengthy trial to have murdered innocent people. The combination of this stuff, when you said grotesque, I don't think you've got a fundamental problem with the concept that the president has pardon power and that power is absolute. It's the way this has all come together.
Well, I've always maintained that it's not absolute. He can't pardon himself constitutionally. I don't believe that's permissible. He can't bestow a pardon as part of a bribery scheme. He can be prosecuted for that. But apart from those narrow limitations, it's very broad. It underscores why it's so important to elect people of good character, because these powers are immense, because the founders did expect that they would be used and utilized for good purposes, not for ill. But we need to try to constrain them as much as we can. The Protecting Our Democracy Act that I introduced along with my fellow chairs months ago tries to put some limits on the abuse of this power. But frankly, there's not much of a remedy for a president who is this corrupt.
So on June 8th of 2018, NBC's Peter Alexander asked this question to Donald Trump as he was getting on to Marine One. Let's just play this for a moment and let's talk about it on the other side.
On the pardon power, do you believe that you are above the law if you could pardon yourself?
No, I'm not above the law. I never want anybody to be above the law. But the pardons are a very positive thing for a president. I think you see the way I'm using them. And yes, I do have an absolute right to pardon myself.
Okay, so I just, in case anybody didn't hear this, the pardons are a very positive thing for a president. And yes, I do have an absolute right to pardon myself. What do we do in this instance? How do we deal with that? He thinks he does.
Well, the way it would be tested is if he attempted to give himself a pardon, and even the language of the Constitution that talks about granting a pardon, the words themselves don't lend themselves to an interpretation where you can grant yourself something. But should he try and pronounce the words, but later be indicted, let's say, by the Southern District of New York in that campaign fraud scheme in which he is identified as individual number one, well, then his defense would raise this purported pardon to defend himself, and it would be litigated through the courts, and I think ultimately he would lose. Because the consequence of a president who can pardon themselves is just too much of a body blow to the rest of the Constitution. You don't interpret one provision as negating all others. If a president can instruct people to violate the law, if he can instruct them to impose martial law and seize voting machines and do all kinds of other crazy and desperate things, and say, if you violate the law in doing so, I will pardon you and then I will pardon myself, you are no longer a nation of laws. And I don't think any court would interpret the pardon power to negate the requirement that he faithfully execute the laws. But that's how it would be tested.
Congressman, I want to ask you about another topic, because we've got about 12 different breaking news topics tonight, including the fact that the president was supposed to be signing this bill that took months to arrive at. You in the House had finished this bill on October 1st. Finally got a deal with the Senate. $600 payments to individuals. The president apparently doesn't like that idea. He's calling for $2,000 payments to individuals and $4,000 to a married couple. We don't know what this means. We don't know whether that means he's not signing the bill or you got to get back to the drawing board. But Nancy Pelosi has said, bring it. We're ready to do $2,000 a person and vote on this on Thursday. What are you hearing about this?
Well, look, we wanted larger checks all along. We wanted a larger package all along. We recognize the immense need in the country. People are lining up in food lines miles long. But the Republicans wouldn't go along with it. Mitch McConnell wouldn't take it up. Kevin McCarthy wouldn't support it. And Donald Trump was missing in action. He delegated to Mnuchin to be his negotiator. Well, we hammered out a deal, the most that we could get out of Mitch McConnell. And now, after it's passed, the president suddenly takes an interest. It's just appalling because people are counting on that money right now. But we will take up a bill by unanimous consent, the speaker has announced, that will put them to the test. You want larger checks? So do we. Let's see the proof that you're serious about this. This is not just some gimmick.
I've never asked you a question that you've been stumped on, but I don't know if you have any idea as to what's going on in the president's head, what this was all about, because you're right. He did have Steve Mnuchin there involved in the negotiations the whole time. None of this came as a secret to the president or as a surprise to the president. What on earth do you think is happening?
Well, I think the president is in a downward mental spiral in these last few weeks of his presidency. He's desperately worried about his liability, his debt, his exposure to the criminal laws when he leaves office. He is worried about being labeled a loser and leaving behind the power and the perks of his office. And I think we can expect his conduct to continue to degenerate. Even the lies that he's telling and the one he told today about, the Democrats throwing out, tons of ballots or whatever it was, even his lies are becoming more unhinged and larger in scope and more a graver departure from reality. So I think we're going to continue to see the degradation of Donald Trump. It's going to be a rocky few weeks until he's gone. It can't come fast enough.
29 days, but I guess that's the problem with normalizing little lies, right? They started with how big the inauguration crowd was, and now he lies about having won the election and election fraud. Thank you for joining us, sir. Adam Schiff is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee and a Democratic representative from California. We always appreciate your time.